To speak to Ms Pucell's motion, and I want to begin by saying that I think everyone in this chamber would have a love for animals. It would make you barely human not to love animals. It's an inherent part of human nature. Just earlier this year we lost our little dog Ronnie at just the tender age of 2. Gone too soon but not forgotten, which is why this motion should be taken seriously, and I do take this motion seriously. President, the motion notes that the House should note that 1. Companion animal abuse is a form of family and domestic violence. 2. Studies show women and companion animals have reported threatened and deliberate animals abuse in up to 71% of FDV situations. 3. Concern for the welfare of companion animals is a significant contributor to women and children remaining in violent homes. 4. The property status of animals under the current legislation makes it easy for perpetrators to acquire and maintain ownership of pets for use for coercive control. Emerging research shows clear links between animal cruelty and the increased likelihood of violence against humans. In 2020, the government supported a motion to better protect companion animals and victim survivors in situations of FDV. And the motion specifically calls on the government to investigate amending the Family Violence Act to include a specific offence for cruelty to animals as a form of early intervention, and to further investigate the link between violence towards animals and humans to make appropriate reforms. This is where the motion ends. It's a heavy motion. Acting President, all humans, all people, anyone with a soul should find domestic violence to be abhorrent. It does not take being a father to make that so, but it does put it in perspective for me at least. We know that women are vastly more likely than men to be victims of domestic violence. That does not discount the men who are suffering from domestic violence, but it is just the truth. And Acting President, I'm a son, a husband, but I am also the father of 5 daughters. It is shocking and appalling that this happens. So let me unpack how this works. I did a bit of research on the topic to prepare for this. Pets can be the subject of threats of harm, can also be taken by an abusive person who is committing family violence as a means of coercive control. That means the victims can be put in an impossible position of having to choose between 2 impossible choices. Pets can also be harmed or killed by a current or former partner or even a family member as a way of indirect violence towards a victim that may have a restraining order or unable to attack that person specifically. Post-relationship, and this is hard to say, a perpetrator may starve, abuse, neglect, threaten to harm or kill a pet when the victim survivor flees the home, and this harm is immense. It can cause massive psychological and economic trauma to these survivors. And let us not forget the impact on children, vulnerable to, unable to escape and forced to witness and sometimes even participate in these acts of animal cruelty. One study of self-selecting victim survivors who owned a pet at the time of family violence noted that there were behavioural changes, 85% of the time with their pets. And much of the time, these people who reported the changes noted that the changes were not small, but significant and long-term, with symptoms including fear of men and anxiety. And we know that this can lead to a lifelong issues for pets. Animal welfare remains a priority for the Ireland Labor government. I think it's fair to say that Victoria has some of the most progressive and modern approaches in this space. But we know, like other forms of coercive control, it can be difficult to identify. Normally perpetrated behind closed doors, the use of pets to continue this cycle obviously can occur more subtly. Take the example of using financial abuse to control a victim survivor. Perpetrators can withhold money when they need to and a sick pet to a vet or buy them food. This leads to a cycle of dependency and makes it increasingly harder to escape. There is no better evidence with victims of reluctant to report family violence and believe delaying fleeing a violent situation is best, out of a concern of their pet and their well-being. I believe this has been noted in today's debate already, but it needs to be re-emphasised. One study found 35% of women delayed seeking refuge for this very reason. And many refugees of this crisis accommodation in Victoria report being unable to house these pets, making this even harder. The research shows that those who harm pets are more likely than those to be a family violence offender. On top of that, they are more likely to offend in general. It is in part the homicidal triad. Research shows harm to pets occurs more frequently where violence is also perpetrated against survivors. One study found that perpetrators who harm pets in a family violence context are 5 times more likely to abuse their partners and more likely to use stalking and emotional violence, physical or sexual. Each of these are truly evil. No one should ever see their pets go through, and it is important that we consider the reality, these risks, in the context of family violence. This is not rare. The link is real. We've also seen contributions across the chamber today note this. The Sentencing Advisory Council referred to studies in their 2019 report, Animal Cruelty Offence in Victoria, that studies of pet-owning women seek services from family violence shelters found between 47 and 71% of the respondents, male partners had threatened, harmed or killed their pet. This has been intense, and I thank Ms Pucell for raising it. It has been important. And I know Ms Pucell is taking on a great tradition set by her former boss, Mr Medic, in advocating in this space. And I'm proud of the work that we have done in this space, Acting President. In the 2022-23 budget, we delivered a record $18.6 million package to support animal care and protection. And since being elected in 2014, the Andrews and now Allan Labor government has invested $8.2 million to shelters and to carers of animal welfare organisations to improve the welfare of Victorian pets. And we've got plenty of reforms to be proud of. That includes banning cruel puppy farms and the strictest breeding rules in the country, making it an offence to sell a pet without a valid microchip and a source number from the Pets Exchange Register, removing the need for greyhounds to be muzzled in public, and there is Victoria's first animal welfare action plan that recognises that animals are sentient, something I'm sure Peter Singer would appreciate. Under the Allan Labor government, our reforms with pets are nation-leading. No longer must Victorians choose between pets that they love and a place to live, thanks to the Andrews Labor government and now Allan Labor government's historic laws providing renters the right to keep a pet. And we know for those who are fleeing violence, it can often be a hard one to find a house. Why should it be made a bit harder having to worry about keeping a pet? This is good reform indeed, and we have provided additional funding to the RSPCA Victoria's Inspectorate to improve compliance and enforcement, to establish Animal Welfare Victoria, which brings together all aspects of animal welfare, including its own dedicated agency. And we've reformed the Animal Welfare Advisory Committee to ensure government receives expert advice. This is on top of introducing mandatory reporting of animal fate data for dogs and cats in shelters and pounds. We were the first in the state to do this after all. And Acting President, I speak about housing a lot in this place, and for a good reason. It is important to reflect that our progress in this space when it comes to housing survivors. This is always the work that has to be done, but I am proud to be a member of the Allan Labor government that is not afraid on talking about these tough tasks. In 2022-23 budget from last year's invested $69.1 million over 4 years to fund existing family violence refuges, and the means to build and staff 2 new refuges and upgrade 3 existing partner agencies operated facilities and purchase 6 new crisis accommodation properties. And this year's budget has committed to delivering $40.4 million for a range of targeted housing and support to transform and meet critical demand, including women's specific services, and of course the vital important congregate housing facilities of which we are delivering 4. We also acquired 325 social housing dwellings to prioritise family violence victims and survivors and their families for social housing through Victorian Housing Register, redeveloping 17 homes in Victoria owned family violence refuges to the core and cluster model, and constructing 3 Aboriginal family violence refuges, and providing over 6,500 flexible support packages each year to help victims survive, and supporting over 1,800 people with private rental assistance. There's always more to do, and we'll always continue to work on building our reforms where we can. And that includes modernising our family welfare regulatory framework and delivering the first ever pet census and progressing reforms to the rehoming of pets. And Acting President, I'd like to put my support for the Sprite coming back to the parliamentary precinct where he belongs. Thank you.